I'll go ahead and call the Livingston Municipal Planning Commission meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everyone tonight. We're going to move right into our order here. Approval of the November the 25th, 2019 minutes. I need a motion. They need to be approved.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Did you get them, Tommy? Okay. All for, let me know saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. There is none. Thank you. Item number 3, I think, has been withdrawn. Is that right, Tommy?
That's correct. They're going to go instead of the rezoning route, they're going to go the board. Sorry. Instead of going the rezoning route, they're going to go the Board of Zoning Appeals route.
Okay. Okay.
So they have officially withdrawn their rezoning request.
Can you?
Okay.
I have a question.
Number 4.
I have a quick question.
Oh.
Can you describe what that issue was with that property, please?
Yes, sir. So originally when the request was submitted, they were wanting to rezone to an R, and it says an R1, but it would actually be an R2 for the establishment of some apartments. But basically it would be multiple single-family houses on a lot equaling 4 or greater, which goes into the multifamily category. In a C3, multifamily housing is a use permitted upon appeal or special exception. I gave them the option. They could pursue this avenue if they wanted to, but rezoning takes longer than a Board of Zoning Appeals special exception. So after discussing that with the Dixons, they agreed to withdraw the request and plead their case to the Board of Zoning Appeals. And then I told them if the Board of Zoning Appeals denies their request, they can come back and try the rezoning request. It's an easier route for everyone involved, in my opinion. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Tommy. Item number 4, consideration of the rezoning request for property located at 521 and 525 North Church Street from C3 General Commercial to R2 High Density Residential. Bradbury request.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to pass out the official rezoning request application. I'll just pass those down, Robert, please. Thank you. And I've also, Kelly, I'm sorry I didn't, I passed these out early, but I'm going to give you, a couple of maps. We'll just pass that down then. And so, and I'm sure that there's someone here for the Bradbury application to speak on its behalf. Okay. Okay. And so what we have here is you'll see 521 and 525 North Church Street. It's highlighted on the aerial map as well as the zoning map. Currently zoned C3. And according to the application, they want to, for apartments, rezone to R2. And it is the parcel, as you can see, just for some clarification, the Meisenheimer Barber Shop, it is right across Zachary Street from it. It's currently, the use is currently, looks like a commercial center in the front, and I'm not sure what it is that those two extensions are in the back, but the previous use, I'd imagine, was commercial.
Okay. May I ask a question? What is is there somebody here that's going to describe to us how they're going to convert that to living quarters?
I would imagine, yes.
Okay.
Okay, there's 4 units over there, isn't that right?
Yeah.
4 units. And we'd like to have them all apartments, 4 separate with walls between. They have been used as offices in the past, and there's still one used as a cash express. And we'd like to have them all R1, R2, whatever you can do to make them apartments.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, this seems to be a similar avenue as the Dixon request, where multifamily use is a use permitted upon appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals. It would be a shorter process if you want to go that route. If you want to continue to do the rezoning, you certainly can, and if you get it rezoned, then it is a use that is permitted. But it will take a recommendation from the Planning Commission, either for or against, and then 2 readings by the City Council to rezone the property.
Okay, whatever's the quickest. We'll do what Ed's doing. Be all right on it, David. We'll do what Ed's doing.
Okay.
The Dixons.
So, yeah, okay, then that's what we'll, if you want, then you can officially withdraw the request from the Planning Commission, and we can go the Board of Zoning Appeals route.
Okay. Okay.
You certainly don't have to. It's up to you however you want to
We
proceed.
need to get started working on the building because there's a great demand for apartments. So many people don't have anywhere to live. And we can't find anybody that has a use for offices. There's just no demand for offices.
Okay,
If it goes to the Board of Zoning, they just approve it and that's it?
that's correct, because our zoning allows for that.
The BZA can,
Now, I mean, they'll still have to bring a site plan in front of the Planning Commission whenever they get their, what they plan to do.
I have a question about how do you propose, and this may be for the owner, Nancy, I'm not sure, to convert those facilities into apartments? What exactly is the plan? What will be done to those office spaces to make them living quarters? Is there going to be anything done to the facade of the existing facility? Personally, they look like office spaces, so I'm just curious how you're going to convert that
They'll
to make
have to
it
have
someplace that
walls
would be
and
an
a
appealing.
Yeah, we're gonna change the walls in the kitchen and everything. We're gonna separate everything out and make 2-bedroom apartments out of them. And we're gonna change the front of the building. We're gonna build a porch on it.
And sir, just for the record, what's your name, please?
David Pryor.
Yes, sir, thank you.
He's the man in charge of everything.
What
And
are those, I guess, wings, or more or less, those legs coming off the back of that? So
For
what
storage building.
storage, and will that continue? Is your intent to continue to use that as storage?
Yes.
Yeah, probably. And there'll be some of them, there'll be 3 of them made into bedrooms. That's attached to the apartments.
Okay,
To the office.
all right. Given that I'm the newest probably member on this planning commission, I don't know the protocol, but is it common that that type of plan and, drawings and sketches, is that something that usually comes before this committee, before it's approved?
That's correct, yes. Now what the Board of Zoning Appeals do will determine if the use is acceptable, but the Board of Zoning Appeals will not approve a site plan for
Yeah,
construction.
Because I'm interested in, if you have folks living in this section of the building that faces Spring, and then you've got these apparently public, storage facilities in the back, is there going to be any ingress, egress issues? I'm just curious how it's all going to work. If you've got 2 different uses in the same parcel, you've got some commercial, that's rental space, and you're saying some residential, right?
Correct, and so that's something that would be addressed in the site plan when it is submitted.
Okay, so I think without that, I don't think we can approve it anyway.
Yeah, well, I think they're withdrawing their request from us tonight, and they're gonna.
But I'm curious, if ordinarily, when this is presented to this committee, would we not have the right to see all that information before we have to vote up or down?
you can certainly request that. Sometimes it is requested, sometimes it's not. It just depends on the situation.
Okay, all right, thanks.
So if it be, if this is what you want to, if you want to proceed to the Board of Zoning Appeals, then we can be in contact and we'll get everything set up and run it in the paper and have everything ready for the next Board of Zoning Appeals
Yeah.
meeting. And again, it will be a quicker timeline than if you go the rezoning route.
Okay, that's why I guess we need to do.
And I'll give each of you a card. You can get in touch with me and we'll set it up for you.
We can go home now, can't we?
Just that particular, this particular instance.
Come back and split, just make two tracks out of it, there's another building right there.
We'll just have to see it inside.
Can you have a residential and commercial right there in the same, I mean, in an adjoining
And
building?
you got it on the square.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. Right.
Okay, Tommy, let's go back over this again and explain to us what they've decided. I know they've deferred on this tonight and then go before the Board of Zoning Appeals, is that correct?
So in both instances, Mr. Chairman, what you had was a piece of, and this is going to go for both requests. The property is zoned C3, which is general commercial. And under general commercial, multifamily housing is a use permitted upon appeal. And so when that is the case, they can appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals and get the use allowed in just one reading. So that's just the use, though. That is not the plan, the site plan. It would not be approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. The site plan would still come back here. So basically what they're saying is you may use this piece of property as multifamily, but we are not approving your plan. And what they were going to do was, what they had initially submitted was a rezoning request to rezone the property from C3 to R2, which would take a recommendation from the Planning Commission, a public hearing, and 2 readings from the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, which is a much longer process than 1 reading from the Board of Zoning Appeals. And I advised them that that was the easier route. Now, either way you go, you still have to have a board vote on and approve it. So none of it's guaranteed. But the easier option, in my opinion, and ultimately what each party decided was to appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals. But I will say this, if allowed, if the special exception or use permitted upon appeal is granted by the Board of Zoning Appeals, each will still have to come back in front of this board with a site plan for us to review, like you said, parking, ingress, egress, how they're going to be, well, not how they're going to be constructed, but the floor plan and things of that nature. So we still have a role in each one of these developments.
Well, I think it's important to know what the building's gonna look like. I mean, we need a plan.
Correct, yes, sir.
Okay, we'll move on to the staff report on the Smith Division.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. And what this is, we usually don't do what's known as administrative approval, which is approve a subdivision plat outside of our normal meeting. But in this instance, it was over December when we didn't meet due to the Christmas holiday. It was something that they needed to get done before the first of the year. They were having an auction. And I spoke to Chairman McCormick and also spoke with the mayor. asked them if we could do a plat administratively. Neither had any objection. The plat was a one-lot subdivision. It's the Smith property out on the corner of 111 and West Volunteer Drive. They just had a big auction not too long ago. It's basically right next door to the wastewater treatment plant. It was just a one-lot subdivision. It did not require any variances, it met all of our requirements, and so we approved that subdivision plat administratively. And so just to read you the particulars on the subdivision plat, it is the Angela Smith division, creating one proposed new lot from property larger than 5 acres located on West Volunteer Drive and State Route 111. The proposed new lot is 2.32 acres, an existing residential structure and an existing accessory structure. The proposed new lot would be served by an existing 4-inch water line, an existing 6-inch sewer line, and complies with both the subdivision regulations and the zoning ordinance. Like I said, that is not typically how we do business, but due to the holiday and circumstances, and with the blessing from Chairman McCormick and Mayor Hayes, we went ahead and approved it administratively. And this is just reporting to the board the activity that had taken place over that time period. And no action is necessary.
Thank you again, Tommy. Okay. Item number 6, training, Tennessee Code, anointed 137208, expansion of non-conforming uses.
Mr. Chairman, if possible, could we go to other business real
Yeah.
quick? I think
Yeah, we do.
Mr. Sales and Mr. Stovall have
Yes.
some business that they would like to discuss with us.
Yes.
And so if you'd like, we can hear them out, and time permitting, we can go back and talk about our training.
Okay, great. David, would you want to come up and kind of, with Jerry, and kind of tell us what's going on there?
Have you guys got a copy of that plat anywhere? I did a plat for Jerry the other day. I don't know if y'all know where he lives, on Red Bud.
For those of you who don't know about it, the cell tower is on the very end of my property up there. And I had originally about 10 acres that I've pieced together in pieces over the years, past 40 years that I've lived up there. And I'll tell you what, the cell tower people are, I guess, supposed to be okay. They pay you and all that, but they're just aggravating me to death. It started out a 20-year lease, and then they came back last year and they wanted to add another 30 years to it and make it a 50-year lease. And then they came back this year and they wanted to add 10 more years to it. And I said, you know, I'm going to be dead and gone. My great-grandkids are going to be fighting over having to pay the taxes and turn around and charge them. You can get the money back, but you have to pay them, and then you have to get the money back from them. And if they don't get anything out of it, if somewhere along the way the lease gets sold, then they're just doing it for nothing. So I finally proposed to them I'd like to sell, what they needed up there. And sad as it is, it's a long access road. I put that up there probably 30 years ago. And it's a steep one, and it's only good for what they're using it for. So they have to have the access road. Otherwise, they could get by with that 1 acre of spot that they have. They're paying commercial rates on up there. And they have to have the access road. So David, he ran that line around to where the access road wouldn't be involved in it. And I'd like to keep that extra a couple acres and add it on to what I already have. I already have about 2 acres there anyway. And that's just like anybody, I'd like a buffer, between me and them. And so therefore he ran that line across there, and I would like to cut that off so I can go ahead and sell them all the rest of that. So that's basically what I'm looking to do. It's not 5 acres. I know y'all require 5 acres for cutting off a piece of property, but this is really not, not enough to meet that criteria. So
Jerry, it'd actually be the cell phone tower spot right there. Is that, and then two sites down below, actually to give them access to get up that road there to the cell
well, there's one other plot that I bought off of Ogletree back years ago. It's intact, that they have to have it because the road goes across it. Okay. And so it's actually a cell tower site. The part of the only flat part of that hill, it goes across there, and then it starts over the hill and turns and goes down. Yeah. And so therefore the property I'm wanting to keep is nothing but hillside and rock. Yeah. So it's not really good to build on or anything. It's just, I'd like to have it added on to mine. Okay.
Thank you, Jerry.
If I could add one thing, when this deal first come up, the folks that were getting the cell tower were supposed to do the survey and were aware that it's supposed to go to planning, and, they didn't do what they're supposed to do. They were technically what they need to survey out is what Mr. Stovall is keeping, because it's the piece that is less than 5 acres. We're pretty sure the other one is going to be 6 acres, 6.5. I would double check the deeds to make sure, but that's what it appears to be. That what he's keeping would need to be surveyed, because what he's selling is more than 5 acres, so it wouldn't come before planning. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think, David, what I can see based on looking at what you've submitted is that right now we have 2 existing parcels. The residence of Mr. Stovall, which is an acre and some, 1.9, and then we have a much larger tract, which is approximately 9 acres or somewhere around in there.
Yeah.
And you're wanting to adjust the boundary line. So we're not creating any new lots. We're just moving, and his lot is actually getting bigger. The one that's under our jurisdiction. The 6 acres is not in our jurisdiction. So
It's out of the city.
no, it is in the city. It's just larger than 5 acres. And so I believe what Mr. Sales is saying, we thought initially, or Mr. Stovall thought that he had submitted what he was supposed to submit. Once we reviewed it, we determined that we needed a little bit more. We needed an actual subdivision plat. And we're trying to help Mr. Stovall, or David is trying to help Mr. Stovall to get this process done as quickly as possible. And so I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I believe what they're asking is to allow the approval of this plat outside of meeting, pending that it meets all of our requirements. And then I would do a report on this.
Would this be a lot line adjustment, or would that be what we call it?
It would be a lot line adjustment. Yes, you're not creating a new lot, you're simply moving property lines. And it sounds like that it would meet all of our requirements. David, just off the top of your head, do you foresee any variances that would come along with this?
If we're doing lot line adjustment and we're using pipes found on the right of ways and don't have, some of them are too close. So
You're not creating any the only variance, in my opinion, would be a setback,
Not that I know of.
because everything else would be existing.
Yes. Yes, we're not
'Cause
creating.
the lot
we're
is
not
getting
putting-
bigger.
Yeah, correct. We're not putting a line close to a building which would create a new variance. No, it's up in the middle of the woods, way away from all the houses.
How soon would you anticipate you being able to get a plat drawn up?
Next Monday, maybe, a week. Is that?
Is my assumption on the request correct?
Yes, we will make it a lot line adjustment.
But no, I'm sorry. Are you asking the board for us to be able to approve this plat outside a meeting?
Yes.
Christian Mansell and myself drove up there. This is nothing but a rock pile, and the road takes a four-wheel drive vehicle to get up there to it. Very, very rough. And if we could do this to help Mr. Stovall, and with what David's going to do later on getting it all divided up, I'd like to see us do it if y'all approve it.
I make a motion that we accept it as presented with pending the,
Staff review.
right.
I second.
Tom, we ready for the training now?
Yes, and I'll leave that up to you. We've gone a little, we've gone to 5:30. If we want to stick around and do some more training, we can. It's January, it's our first meeting. We got several more to get this in. If you guys would like to forego the training, that certainly would be no issue for me.
Is that agreeable with everyone? Hands in there?
Keep going?
Keep going. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Perfect. So, yes, sir, Mr. Stovall.
It's hard for me to believe, but I was on this board 40 years ago. Just about a year, I think.
I'd like to have spoken to him.
Almost got it.
So what we have in front of us here is, sounds good, thank you. So what we have here in front of us is an amendment to Tennessee Code Annotated 137208. It's not an amendment, I'm sorry, that was incorrect. It's state law that was adopted a few years ago, and what it deals with is, it says the enforcement of ordinances, remedies, and applicability of provisions. And that's a fancy way of saying it deals with the expansion of non-conforming uses. So the first thing I think we need to talk about is what exactly is a non-conforming use. And a non-conforming use, you hear the term grandfathered in a lot when you're talking about zoning ordinances. And as far as our zoning ordinance is concerned, a non-conforming use is a building, structure, or use existing at a time of enactment of this ordinance that does not conform with the provisions of this ordinance for the district in which it is located. So for example, if we have an R1 district and there is an apartment complex that is in that R1 district, or a business or anything else that would be in that R1 district that is not a single-family home, basically, that would be a non-conforming use. As of this ordinance, it says it is not allowed, but at the time the ordinance was adopted, it was existing lawfully. And that's the key word there, existing lawfully. Then it is allowed to continue its existence and be what's known, as I said, a non-conforming use. So, before the passage of this ordinance, non-conforming uses were allowed to exist, but they could only exist in the state that they were when the ordinance was adopted. They could not get bigger. They could not. They could get smaller, but if they got smaller, they couldn't go back to the size that they were. And so that became to be a problem. That non-conforming uses could not get bigger. And so I'm not going to go over all of the parts of this ordinance, but there are two sections that I feel like are very relevant to what we do here in Livingston and in regards to our zoning ordinance. So if you could turn over the page to number C, it's the very first thing on the second page. And I'm gonna paraphrase this, but I'm gonna read some of it too. It says, industrial, commercial, or other business establishments in operation and permitted to operate under zoning regulations or exceptions thereto, in effect immediately preceding a change in zoning, shall be allowed to expand operations and construct additional facilities which involve an actual continuance and expansion of the activities of the industry or business which were permitted and being conducted prior to the change in zoning. So basically that means that if you have a non-conforming use, you may expand your structure. So if you've got that house in a C zone, where it's prohibited, you've got a house in a commercial zone, you can add on. You can make it bigger as long as you meet two conditions. The first condition is that when you make it bigger, you don't violate any of the existing setbacks in the zone. So you can go all the way up to the setback, but you cannot go over. And the second condition is that in order to expand, you may not acquire additional land for the expansion of that non-conforming use. So that means that you can get bigger, but only under the original parcel line that you had when the zoning ordinance and zoning map was adopted. So in layman's terms, you couldn't buy your neighbor's property, make your tract larger, and then expand. Sorry, I'm talking with my hands. And then expand over that line. Does everybody understand what I'm saying? And I'll tell you what would be.
Can you give us an example?
Well, yeah, let's pull out this map right here that we've got.
Okay.
So if you'll look to the property just to the south of the highlighted parcel. I'm just going to make sure of something real quick. Yes, okay. So the house directly to the south that says Jerry Copeland. You guys see that house? So C3 currently, residential uses, single-family residential is a prohibited use in a C3. So this house, the Jerry Copeland property, is a non-conforming use because single-family residential is not permitted in this zone anymore. So Mr. Copeland could expand his home basically to the east, to the back of the property line. But to me, it looks basically like he's sitting almost on the property lines to the north and to the south. So he really couldn't build in that way. But what this law says is that he can't even buy 100 feet off of the Dixon to expand his lot and make it bigger, and then expand over to that.
But it can go back.
Yeah.
To the east.
As long as he stays within the setbacks. Correct. Does that make sense? Okay. So I also want to talk about the second part of this ordinance that is, or the second part of the state law that is very important. Go down to number G. And it says, except and provided in subsection, I think that's just a / there, subsections B and D shall not apply if any industrial, commercial, or other business establishment ceases to operate for a period of 30 continuous months, and the industrial, commercial, or other business use of the property did not conform with the land use classification as denoted in the existing zoning regulation for the zoning district in which it is located. So what does that mean? Used to, the jurisdiction or the community determined how long a non-conforming use could be dormant and not come back. In Livingston, with residential uses, you get 1 year. So let's go back to Mr. Copeland's house. If Mr. Copeland or whoever lives there were to move out of that house for a period of longer than 1 year, someone could not move back in that house and occupy it as a residence. Because residential uses are, or single-family residential is prohibited in C3. Okay? So we as the community that has jurisdiction, we determine that. And before this law, we also determined it for commercial uses as well. We could set whatever time period that we wanted. And that was just how it was. But state law has come in and said that if a business goes out or an industry ceases to operate or ceases to exist and it's non-conforming, they have 30 months to be non-existent, and they can come back as a non-conforming use. When they hit 30 months and 1 day, they are not allowed to operate anymore as what they were, as a business or an industry.
Does that mean that it has to be the exact same business, or can it be a different business?
As long as it is the same, like say, a transference of ownership does not matter. It has to do with the use. So let's just say there was a restaurant that was open, Tommy's Restaurant, and I went out of business and my business sat vacant for 2 years. If Philip comes in, buys the building and opens Philip's Restaurant, that's fine. Different owner, same use. But if Philip buys my building and come in and say wants to open an auto parts store, different use, would not be allowed. So in that non-conforming period, the business has to be like, or similar to the previous.
Residential structures as well. So if you move.
Residential structures are still governed by the jurisdiction. They're not governed by state law.
So at 11-203, 11-203, 12, it was 6 months.
6 months. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought it was 1 year.
So, that would still apply to residential. 6 months.
Yes. State law does not have, state law has not come up with something to govern residential.
So in Livingston, if Mr. Copeland moves out of this house and nobody's in that house for 6 months and a day, then it's over.
That's right.
That
That's-
non-conforming use, that property would not be able to be used as residential again.
What if it's on the market for sale?
Well, the use is still, I mean, I would think that would be okay.
Yeah.
I mean, if the house is.
Yeah,
Yeah, because you're
But if it's
still,
for sale, if it's for sale, and it's 6 months, and you're trying to sell it as a house, it's not sold in 6 months. You know, how's that gonna work?
I think what he's saying is that you'd still be able to keep going under that. If the intent is to keep it as a house.
correct, yeah.
If you just abandon the property with no stated.
And I mean, I think,
Future use.
I think common sense can be applied here, you know, but if there's no intent to sell it and it just sits empty for 6 months, I mean,
We may have some of that in our community.
yeah, we
We
may.
may have some houses that are unoccupied, that are sitting in commercial property.
We have some that have a for sale sign on them too,
Oh.
that's not gonna sell, I mean, in my opinion.
And they're not, and they're
Well-
residential in a commercial zone?
And they're probably not listed with a real estate company.
No.
They just got a for sale sign stuck on the front porch.
I mean, and, you know, the town can create whatever. 6 months seems short to me. Most places that I work with, it's 1 year.
But this is applying only to commercial.
Commercial and industrial. Correct.
Does any of this have anything to do with that issue that was brought to us tonight on this?
No, sir.
Okay.
I mean, unless,
Is that how?
in one,
It's commercial zone.
correct.
Its intended purpose was commercial building.
Mm-hmm.
Now they just want to rezone it.
Yeah, that's a permitted use over there, that particular one, so it could lay dormant for 5 years, and somebody could come back in and open a business, and it'd be fine.
No, I was talking about if, this doesn't have anything to do with switching a commercial to a residential.
No, sir, no. This is, like I said, the expanding or continuance of a non-conforming use. But that's pretty much it. I hope you guys learned something. Keep those, please, Christian. And
Well, you know, that may have been, some of this is, you know, with these people having to withdraw, but when Mr. Dixon came in, what he told me was he was looking at a single.
I need a motion, we adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.